So hello, everybody. My name is Yaron Goldberg, and I'm president of Piano Cleveland, that maybe some of you know as the presenter of the Cleveland International Piano Competition. Today, I have this wonderful opportunity of collaborating for the first time. We as Piano Cleveland collaborating for the first time with Dance Cleveland. Such a wonderful organization that we all love and learned to attended many performances of. And really, this is an exciting opportunity presenting this the event that is happening on March 19, together with Simone Dinnerstein and Pam Tanovitz. And really, this is an honor and a privilege for me also to be interviewing Simone towards this performance. So maybe because some of you're the supporters of Dance Cleveland, maybe are less familiar. Maybe some of you are very familiar with pianists and piano music, and maybe some of you are a little bit less. So just for those of you who do not know Simone Dinnerstein, so I'll just start with a couple of quotes. A quote from the New York Times who called Simone a unique voice in the voice of Bach interpretation. So Simone was born in New York City, where she still lives, and she's performed with some of the world's most wonderful orchestras, such as the New York Philharmonic and the London Symphony. She also played in major concert halls from the Carnegie Hall in New York through the Philharmonie in Berlin and the Opera House in Sydney. So Simone, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I would like to start with a very basic question. And this is as a child, what attracted you to become a pianist?
It was actually a ballet class that I took when I was about 5. My family and I were living in Rome, and there I took ballet classes, and they had a real pianist who played Chopin in class. And that was when I first heard the instrument, and I really fell in love with piano music. And I asked my parents if I could take lessons. And they said that we would have to wait until we moved back to Brooklyn, because my grandmother had a piano that she could lend to us. And that happened when I was 7. And I reminded them, and they brought the piano over, and I started having lessons.
Wow, that's wonderful. And when did you feel that, or when did you understand that this is really something that you were going to do, like as your major career path?
I pretty much fell in love with it right away. And I came from a family that we used to watch lots of old movies. And so my idea of what it meant to be a pianist, to have a career as a pianist, kind of came from those movies that I saw. And so from a very young age, I knew that I loved playing the piano, and I had this very romantic notion of what it meant to be a concert pianist, and that's what I wanted to do. So, now that I'm so much older, it seems kind of ridiculous to me that like an 8-year-old would know what they want to do, especially looking at other 8-year-olds. It seems insane to decide your path at that age, but that is how I felt about it then. And so I just have always wanted to be a pianist, and that's what I am now.
Yes, that's incredible. I really, it's a very interesting point how, many of my friends, because I'm a pianist too, of course, so they always say how, they have usually been choosing their career paths later on when they're like in their 20s, maybe they start thinking about their path, while sometimes, for example, like in your case, also in mine, this is really something I would say that even chooses you in a much younger age than usual. So what could you maybe share with everybody, maybe like a couple of moments that you remember that were particularly significant to you as you were sort of like growing in your younger, like just as growing up and becoming like a professional concert pianist, as being very significant moments in your path?
Well, there are so many different moments. I think one, a very formative thing for me was meeting Maria Curcio, who was my teacher from well, I started studying with her in the summers when I was 15. And then I moved to London to study with her when I was 18. And I very much remember meeting her when I was 15, having my first lessons with her that summer, and her having a sound that came from a completely different era. She had studied with Arthur Schnabel, and she had this kind of translucent, transparent sound. And I knew that I wanted this sound. And so that was a very, very formative experience for me, to hear her and to study with her, and then finally to get to move over to London to spend 3 years studying with her. I guess other formative experiences. Well, I guess the whole, it's hard to pin down one thing, but when I found out that I was expecting my son, which was in 2001, that was a kind of pivotal moment for me, because I had always thought about, from when I was very young, like I remember talking about it with Maria when I was 15, I'd thought, oh, I want to have a child, but I also want to perform, and how's that going to work? And when my husband and I discovered that I was pregnant, it was also right after I had won an audition for a place called Astral, located in Philadelphia, that helps young artists. And part of winning it was that I was going to have a debut recital. And so these two things coincided. And I thought, like, becoming a mother is such a big thing, such a sort of landmark. And I felt that, I was suddenly going to be really mature. Like I had to really know what I was doing, because I was going to be in charge of another human being. And it made me feel that I was ready to learn my favorite piece of music, which was the Goldberg Variations. And so I think that moment of making the choice to learn that piece, and it coinciding with becoming a mother, that's something that was a very important step for me.
Thank you very much for sharing. And yeah, well, the Goldberg, we're going to get to it in just a moment, because this is, of course, a very major part of the reason that we're speaking today. So just again, along the years, you've developed a very sort of like broad interest of different kinds of music and different projects, and you have created also some very, very interesting and unique projects, such as Mozart in Havana, such as recording a trilogy during the pandemic. I also read at home. So can you please maybe share a little bit with us, a little bit more about these projects?
Yes, I think that I like to do work that is meaningful to me, both in my choice of repertoire that I play and in the people that I collaborate with. I find it very inspiring to work with different types of musicians and people from other disciplines too. And during the period when we were kind of locked down pretty much in 2020, I felt very kind of disconnected from music for the first time in my life. I felt very, I was just so upset by everything going on, and I just felt like music wasn't very meaningful to me. I didn't want to listen to it. I didn't really want to play it. And I had a talk about this with my producer, he's produced all of my albums, Adam Abe's House, and he's a wonderful person and a good friend. And I was explaining this to him, and he said to me, "Why don't you use this time to record? And I can come to your house and we can record in your room." And I thought that was insane because I have a beautiful, beautiful piano. I have a Hamburg D that I bought in Berlin a number of years ago when I recorded an album there. But I never thought I'd be able to record on it again because it was so hard to get it into my house in Brooklyn. And you know, I have a relatively small room for this enormous piano, and I thought there was no way that I was ever going to be able to use it again for recording. And anyway, Adam came down and set up all of his equipment and managed to capture a really beautiful sound in that room. And so it led to me recording 3 albums. I just released the 3rd one in January.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And wow, I'm very curious to hear that, what like a home produced album in this particular time.
Yeah.
That sounds so intriguing. Wonderful. And I also know that you are very interested and in really kind of like taking the piano outside of the concert hall. So of course, I mean, you've been performing all around the world and in very major halls, but also sort of like reaching out to new audiences, which is, by the way, something we are very passionate about in Piano Cleveland as well, really trying to reach out to the community and finding you know, elements of piano music that could be attractive to people, regardless of whether they, you know, whether they're familiar with piano music or whether they grew up with it before. So could you maybe share also a little bit about your experience in this sort of like taking the piano outside of the concert hall and going to neighborhoods or you know, or different locations which would we would not normally think about?
Yeah, I think I started doing that when I graduated from Juilliard in was it 96. I started playing concerts for an organization called the Piatigorsky Foundation, and that foundation's mission is to bring classical music to new audiences everywhere. And so I had lots of concert tours where I would do something like 10 concerts in East Texas. And I would go to libraries and community centers and churches and you know, each day do a different concert. And the concert always involved talking about the music that I was playing as well as playing it. And those concerts were some of the most memorable experiences I've ever had. And I started just doing this in general. You know, I really enjoy going to different communities, and it is a fabulous experience to play at Carnegie Hall or at some beautiful, beautiful concert hall. Like the acoustical space is so inspiring, and also the history surrounding a concert hall has a lot of resonance and inspiration. But I don't really like the elitism of classical music. I don't like the fact that there's a kind of class culture around it, because basically people that are wealthy enough to get tickets to go to see concerts are the ones that listen to concerts. And that seems unfair. And it seems also like it's excluding a whole group of people and making people think that there's some kind of mystique or highbrow nature to classical music that is only for certain types of people. And in fact, I think that classical music is just a great body of literature that is so it's so human, and there's so much in it that everyone can love and can speak to everyone. And so I really would like to take it out of that sort of ivory tower and make it something that can be accessible to more people.
That's really wonderful, Simona. And really, it's a lot of times it's maybe a matter of how there's something about a concert hall, as much as you said, you know, that once you perform in somewhere like, you know, Carnegie Hall or somewhere with a beautiful acoustic or a beautiful hall, there's really something really inspiring about it. At the same time, sometimes in concert halls, if maybe some audience member that is not used to the setting is sort of seeing something from afar on a big stage. And there's also something which is a little bit, could in certain occasions, for somebody who may be not used to listen to this kind of music, create some kind of barrier. And this is, I think, why it's so important also, that kind of work that you're doing to really sort of create this kind of engagement, and being also in a space that people would feel just comfortable to sit and listen to. We're also big fans of, again, presenting concerts in smaller settings and combining different kinds of music, of piano music, just in order to really kind of like attract and creating that kind of language that, that more people would be able to relate to.
I think that presenting music in an honest way that is about, I think that if you do not talk down to the audience, but you just are really showing the audience what is meaningful about the music to you as a performer, that the audience knows, they know if it's honest or not. And so that's true of any genre or anything really. And the challenge is when trying to do stuff that's like crossover or trying to be something that you are not, like, so I feel like with all of my collaborations, I try to just be who I am and communicate that with whoever it is that I'm working with or with my audience. But the danger for me is if I try to second guess what people think is accessible. Accessibility is just really about communication. And, everybody most people are good at communicating what they know. So I try to communicate what I know with people. And I think that that's a great thing when I work with young people, with young pianists or young musicians, to try to get them to understand that it's good enough to be themselves. They just have to be able to share that with other people.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. and yeah, really kind of trying to find, because there's something, a beauty about music that can really speak to everybody. I just had a lunch with one of our patrons, who's a person I really admire, and he's saying, how can you sort of like project, he doesn't come from a music background, and sort of saying, when all these things are happening in the world, how can you really kind of express the importance and of music, particularly at the time when things are happening as we're hearing these days. And I think that really music does have the power of doing that. It's sort of like a mutual language that people can just relate to as it is, which is, simple and beautiful. And absolutely. I will just, we don't have so much time left. And I would like to, of course, finish the interview part with the performance and you coming to Cleveland to perform on March 19. And I'd like to start just a bit with asking you about the Goldberg Variations. So maybe I would assume that a lot of, our friends here who are listening have heard this piece and have heard of this piece. But could you really, this is such a unique piece. And you had mentioned that this is one of your favorite pieces. So can you please maybe in just a couple of points, because I know we can speak for a very long time about this piece, maybe share a little bit what is so special for you about this piece, and also a little bit that you've been playing it for over 15 years now. How have you now been seeing it differently, along the years that you've been playing it, maybe from what you saw it at the beginning?
I think that it's a piece of music that has the ability to lend itself to many different kinds of interpretations, and it doesn't feel like a piece of music that is necessarily grounded in the time when it was written. So it has the ability to take on the flavor of many different times and many different types of genres. How is that possible? That is a really good question, and it's one that I kind of wrestle with. But there's something about Bach's music, and in particular the Goldberg Variations, that has a certain type of abstraction to it, which is perhaps because the writing has such a sense of form, and it's so linear, and it's multi-linear music, and there's something about that kind of, it's almost like the bones, the bare bones of music. And so you can take what you want from that and flesh it out in different kinds of ways. If you take something that's really luscious by Chopin, it has less of an ability to change, I think. The Bach can be, you can add time or take away time, or play it on different instruments, or play it at different tempi, and it works every which way that you do it. As an architectural work, it's also unique because it's one of the longest keyboard works ever written, and it has a form that is very alluring because it starts and ends in the same point. So it starts with an aria and ends with the same aria, and there's this circularity to it, which is a very satisfying shape for us. And the variations, the 30 variations that happen in between those two arias, are all variations on a bass line. And so there isn't a feeling of familiarity with a theme. There's no theme, there's no melody. What we're relating to is the underlying structure of the variations. And I think that that's also something that is really interesting and mysterious, and allows for a lot of room for interpretation.
And so how would you say that, I mean, let the working together with the dancers, you know, on this piece, did it also sort of like bring a new angle for you, or how has that been, you know, in that same process? And if you could just like let us know a little bit about how this project started at all, between you and Pantanowitz, and just like your experience, you know, doing this project together.
Yeah, I really wanted to work with a choreographer. I've always felt a very strong interest in dance, and also the connection between music and dance. I think about movement a lot, and when I'm interpreting anything, I think about gesture, body, the intention of a phrase as being something that is an actual physical movement. And so I had seen Pam Tanowitz, her company, doing a piece at the Guggenheim Museum, which they did with a string quartet. And I was really struck by not only her style of choreography, but also the way that she responded to the music, which was really interesting in that it was an abstract response. She was not literally going with the music. And that is something that I have a problem with some choreography, where it seems to be like a literal transcription of what you're hearing. And so I talked to her and I said that I would be really, really interested in working with her. And I thought that the Goldberg Variations would be a fascinating work for us to do together. And at first she was quite loath to do that, because she was sort of intimidated by the history of choreography surrounding the Goldberg Variations. In particular, Jerome Robbins did a very, very well-respected version of it, which actually I have played. I did that with the Paris Opera Ballet. And in his case, while it is a stunning choreography, it is truly literal, in that, you know, you have a canon in the music, and then you see a canon on the stage between the dancers. So Pam and I worked on this choreography together, and she really took my interpretation of the piece with the breath that I use and the different type of character that I give each variation. And we really worked on it together. And what's quite interesting is that she doesn't have her dancers count at all. So while there are certain landmarks where we tend to fall in line with each other, there's a lot of it that is kind of amorphous rhythmically. And I really like that. So we had a great experience because we had several residencies working on it together. And her dancers are also extremely interactive and part of her creative development. And so the way that I interacted with the dancers and with her, and it was just a very collaborative experience. We probably spent a couple of months in the studio together, all together, working on it.
I'm sure that anybody who's going to come be there at March 19 is in for a treat, in for a big treat. And so Simone Dinnerstein, very, very happy to speak with you today. And we all look forward to having you in Cleveland.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it too. Yeah. And very nice to talk with you. I think your competition is wonderful. I just recently was judging the, can't remember what stage it was, of the leads competition. And there were several pianists who had done well in Cleveland who I heard in this, and I was so impressed with their playing. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Simone.
Yeah. Nice talking with you.
Nice talking to you too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.